بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما رب العالمين. اللهم أعنا على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك. So last week we started what ibnalqayyim rahimahullah introduced as far as the benefits of restraining the glances, right? So he said that in order to prevent the disease of entering the heart, this is preventative measures. So he says two things need to happen. One is to restrain the glances, and the second is to strengthen the heart. So we'll talk about both, insha'Allah Rabbil Alameen, today. So we started with lowering the gaze, restraining the glances, the looks last week. And he mentioned benefits. Benefit number 1, 2, 3, 4. So today we'll add 3 more benefits and conclude that section. So he says benefit number 8. قال أنه يسد على الشيطان مدخله من القلب. He says it blocks, when you don't look at the haram, it blocks the entry of the shaitan into the heart. So as we understood so far from the explanations of Ibn al-Qayyim, the target of the shaitan is the heart. So all of his plots, like all of his maneuvering, is for him to know how can he penetrate that fortress into the heart. And once he gets inside, he'll try to take control. And once he takes control, he takes control of the entire body, entire life. Makes sense, right? So how does he go inside? So he's saying here that through the glances, it's one of the strongest ways by which shaitan enters the heart. قال فإنه يدخل مع النظرة. He says he enters with the glance, with the haram glance, or with a glance that is halal, but it is over and beyond what you need. So it can be used to corrupt you and drive you towards the dunya, but just let's focus on the haram for now, okay? He enters with the glance, and he enters the heart with it faster than air filling a vacuum. He says faster than an air filling a vacuum, meaning there is no delay. He immediately enters the heart with that glance, and he starts to use it against you. Something haram that you looked at, he starts to use it against you. قال فيمثل له صورة المنظور إليه. He recreates the image that you've seen with your eyes. He recreates it in your heart. He reminds you of it because it leaves an imprint. Whatever you see, it leaves an imprint on you, right? And if you forget it, or if it's not important to you, or you don't keep revisiting that image, you will forget about it. It doesn't stay with you, right? But if it is important to you, you'll keep replaying what you've seen, right? You'll keep bringing back that image and thinking about it. If it is haram, shaitan will drive that. Not only will you do it, shaitan will drive it. So he brings that image back and he will beautify it, enhance it, exaggerate it. وَيَجْعَلُهَا صَنَمًا يَعْكِفُ عَلَيْهِ الْقَلْبِ. And he turns it into an idol, right? Like an idol that people used to worship, so they will be stationed next to it, devoted completely to it. He says he turns it into an idol that you're constantly thinking about. He doesn't let go of it and leave you to let go of it. So how he does this? Because you introduce that image into your head. Now, he knows that that image in reality is not as beholding. So what he does is that he exaggerates it. And now we have, in addition to shaitan, we have makeup and we have filters and we have technology that enhance any image that you see beyond reality. So what you see behind a screen, right, or on a screen, is not real, right? It's not real. Not only because two-dimensional, but also because many things have been applied to it to make it unreal. But we mostly forget that that image is not real. So what you see bewitches you. Someone as beautiful as this, as articulate, as cute as this person, something as attractive as this can exist, and I don't have it, but I want it. So that leaves an imprint. And if in fact, if you were to think about the reality of what you're seeing, you'll understand the deception. If you were to think about the limitation of whatever is trying to deceive you, you'll understand that it should not deceive you, because nothing is this perfect, nothing is this complete, nothing lasts. Everyone ages. Everything has flaws. If you just simply were to think about the flaw of the thing, or the flaws, not only one flaw, the flaws of the thing that is trying to enchant you, or that it had taken your mind, you'll understand that no, it is so limited, so flawed, so imperfect. Its eventuality is imperfection and decay and decomposition, that it shouldn't. But shaitan doesn't let that thought into your head. So what he does is what he beautifies it. ثُمَّ يَعِدُهُ وَيُمَنِّيهِ. Then he promises him, right? And he gives him hope. You can be with so-and-so. You can get so-and-so. You can't get this haram. You can be happy with this haram. So he builds something around it. And he knows it's false. And if you were to think about it, you will understand that it's false, but we don't. قَالَ وَيُوقِدُ عَلَى الْقَلْبِ نَارَ الشَّهْوَةِ. And he says, then he inflames the heart with the fire of desire. The natural desire that a person has for the other. So he inflames this desire and he throws it, or he inflames it further with the wood of sin. So he allows you or pushes you to commit more sin, to take another glance, to try to talk to so-and-so, to try to touch so-and-so, to in a sense you're thinking, I'm satisfying my desire, but all of these things are inflaming them. So when you approach the haram, the greater proximity, closeness to the haram inflames the desire, does not take it back, does not take it down, does not put it out. Right? So you may think that if I only talk to them, if I only sit next to them, if I only touch them, then I will feel better. No, you're not going to feel better. You'll have a greater urge to commit the haram. So the closer you are to it, the more likely that you are going to commit it. So he's saying he will inflame it with the ma'asi, with the sins. And then he says the heart then will be roasting in that intensity of desire. فَيَصِيرُ الْقَلْبُ فِي اللَّهِيبِ. So there's a fire on the inside burning. You want this and you want it right now, and you don't feel that you can live without it, and you have to commit that haram. And he draws an image, rahimahullah. قال فَمِنْ ذَلِكَ اللَّهِيبِ. It is from this fire that you see this breath, or the size of frustration, size of desire, size of intense desire. It is from that it is generated. قال فإن القلب قد أحاطت به النيران من كل جانب. He says the heart now is burning with a fire that surrounds it from every side. It's in the middle of the fire, just like a lamb is in the oven. He's being cooked with this desire, and the cook is whom? The shaitan. Because he knows that you can't now live without this thing, and now he keeps feeding it. قال ولهذا كانت عقوبة أصحاب الشهوات للصور المحرمة أن جعل لهم في البرزخ تنور من نار. He says, therefore it was adequate that those who have committed haram, which is zina, with these beautiful images that they have longed for and allowed themselves to desire, and ultimately they allowed that desire to take hold of them, meaning they committed zina or anything of the sort. He says their punishment that Allah had put for them in the barzakh, in the grave, is that they were deposited, their souls were deposited in an oven of fire, and they are burning in it until the day of judgment, as in the hadith that we've mentioned. And we've mentioned that hadith and we've explained it. So he says he's correlating here two things. Why were they punished in fire? Because they've allowed the fire of desire to burn inside of them and produce sin. So he says there's a correlation. It's an apt punishment. For the fire of desire in this dunya, you get a fire in the hereafter. Right? So that's the benefit. Number 8, which is what? When you don't look at the haram, you block the shaitan from entering your heart and overtaking it. He says, التاسعة أنه يفرغ القلب للفكرة في مصالحه والاشتغال بها. He says it will free the heart. Benefit number 9. If you don't look at the haram, it will free your heart to think about what benefits you, and for that to preoccupy you. So if you're not looking at the haram, you're free. Free to do what? To focus on what Allah Azza wa Jal loves. To do the things that benefit you, not the things that harm you. But if you let your glances loose, this will make you forget what benefits you and will stop you from pursuing it. So your affairs will be in disarray, and you will follow your desire, and you will fall in heedlessness. So he says 2 things. Either you are looking at the haram, and if you're looking at the haram, you're not going to remember what benefits you. And you're not going to have the desire to pursue it. Remember last time when we talked about focus? And we said that if you want to focus on something and to be productive, you leave distractions away. That's a similar point. He says if you are looking at the haram, you can't possibly think about things that are beneficial to you. What are you thinking about? I want to be with so-and-so. I want to talk with so-and-so. I want to go out with so-and-so. You're engaged in fantasies or planning for haram. None of these things actually are beneficial. So they take your time away from you, a time where you could have been spent on thinking about things that are actually beneficial. Even in terms of marriage. I can marry so-and-so. I should look for a good wife, for a good husband. I should plan for it. I should work. I should purchase this. I should rent that. Practically thinking about things that are beneficial that ultimately will serve to satisfy your desire. Instead of this, you're pursuing something haram and engaging in fantasy. Harmful fantasy. So he says it's not possible for you to have both of those things. If you don't look at the haram, then your mind is free. Your heart is free. You could do things that please Allah and benefit you. If not, your mind is not free. It's not yours. Had been hijacked by somebody else. So you need to free it. And Allah Azza wa Jal says, وَلَا تُطِعْ مَنْ أَغْفَلْنَا قَلْبَهُ عَنْ ذِكْرِنَا وَاتَّبَعَ هَوَاهُ وَكَانَ أَمْرُهُ فُرُطًا. He says, do not listen to the one that we had made his heart neglectful and away from, distant from our remembrance. And he followed his desire, and his affairs were in disarray, in loss. So ibnalqayyim says, وَإِطْلَاقُ النَّظَرِ. He says, if you let your glances loose, you look at everything, especially the haram, this will bring these things in accordance and in proportion. Meaning the more that you do of this, the more that you'll have of these. And they are degrees, or you can think of them as a ladder. The first thing is a ghafla. Right? أَغْفَلْنَا قَلْبَهُ عَنْ ذِكْرِنَا. You remember, or you begin with a distance from Allah Azza wa Jal. That's how it begins. You're away, you don't remember. The heart is not connected, you are distant. So that's the first. So when you're away from Allah Azza wa Jal, well, you have to follow something. You have to follow a particular direction in life. What and whom are you going to listen to? He says, وَاتَّبَعَ هَوَى. You'll follow your desire. Because if you're not in ghafla, you will follow whom? Allah. If you're not in ghafla, you will follow Allah. If you're in ghafla, you're not aware now what Allah wants, what He desires from you, you're not interested, you have not remembered it for a long time. So when you are in that state, whom are you going to follow? Not Allah. You don't remember. So it's your hawa. وَاتَّبَعَ هَوَى. And if you follow your desire, what will happen to you? Ruin. You'll be in ruin. All your affairs, right, will be corrupted. Because you're away from Allah's guidance. So he says, if you let your glances loose, then that is what you're going to reap. He says, العاشرة قال إن بين العين, meaning the 10th benefit. He says that between the eye and the heart is a pathway. Well, let's call it even a highway. Each is affected by the changes in the other. If one is reformed, the other is reformed. And if one is corrupt, the other is corrupt. So if the heart is corrupt, the eye is corrupt. If the eye is corrupt, the heart is corrupt as well. Okay? And that's interesting. On the one hand, you understand if the heart is corrupt, the tool is simply the eye is simply a tool of the heart. Right? If the heart likes something, the eye looks for it. Right? And you could typically look, or you could typically predict what a person loves based on what they're looking at, or what they like to listen to. Or who directs those two things? It's the heart. Oh, he likes this, he's looking at it. And if he's not looking, he's not interested. So if the heart is reformed, the eye is reformed because you're looking based on the intent of the heart, the devotion or the love of the heart. And if the heart is corrupt, it looks for corruption. Right? The other way is also true. So if the eye is corrupt, meaning the heart is fine, but you're not guarding your eyes, and you look at this and that, it will bring corruption to your heart. And if your heart or your eye is trying to be righteous, or you push it towards righteousness, it will bring that righteousness and that reform into your heart, and that will help it. So he says there's a connection, a deep connection between the two. قال فإذا خربت العين وفسدت. He says if the eye is corrupt, the heart will be corrupt, and it will become like a garbage, like a dump that collects every contaminant, right? Everything dirty will become deposited, or will be deposited into the heart. And as you, subhanAllah, as you are careful not to eat whatever, you should be more careful not to see and look at whatever. That you do not allow anyone to come and suggest food for you. Right? Come and tell you, eat this. And you don't know its source. You don't know who cooked it. You don't know if it's good or not. You don't know if the ingredients work for you or not. You don't allow anyone to come and simply suggest food, and you just simply take it from them. Do you? You don't just simply find garbage in the street and you go and pick it up and you eat it. Because you understand there will be real physical consequences to this. You will get sick. And maybe a sickness that will be your end. Similarly, also the eye is also feeding your heart. So you're not supposed to, you're not allowed to, it's not wise to simply consume everything thinking that whatever I look at is fine. No, that is going to be poison to your heart. You're collecting garbage. Right? And your heart will be filled with garbage. Will be trashy. Right? Will be thinking about trash. Would like to consume trash. And then will produce trash. So you can't do that. You have to really protect your heart and guard it. قال وصار كالمزبلة فلا يصلح لسكن معرفة الله ومحبته. It says if it is garbage and it's filled with garbage, it will be unfit to host the knowledge about Allah Azza wa Jal, knowing Allah and loving Allah and returning to Him and being comforted by Him and being joyful in being close to Him, because that's the opposite of what the heart contains now. So if the heart has sin in it, there's no space in it, fitting space in it for Allah Azza wa Jal. That's why you feel alienated when you sin. That's why the sound of the Quran seems alien to a heart that is sinful. The sound of the adhan, right? They may run away from it because it goes against what brings joy to their heart. What brings joy to their heart is sin. So if they listen to anything sinful that they have consumed and they love, yeah, their heart is joyful. If they see something sinful or that invites to the sin that they love, their heart is joyful. If they hear anything that tells them that what they're doing is wrong, they become upset and angry. And that is because the heart is unfit to consume wholesome food, to consume what Allah loves, because it has the opposite. So he says if you simply allow anything and everything to enter your heart through your eyes, the heart will be like a garbage, like a dump. Right? So he says, فَهَذِهِ إِشَارَةٌ إِلَى بَعْضِ فَوَائِدِ غَضِّ الْبَصَرِ. He says, with the 10th one, he says, this is a indication or signs of some of the benefits of restraining your glances. تُطْلِعُكَ عَلَى مَا وَرَاءَهَا. He says, it will give you an idea of what lies beyond. Meaning, wallahu a'lam, either that there are more benefits, and if you think about it, you'll discover them, but he just gave you few points. Or that these points will yield extra benefits. If you were to actually restrain your glances, you'll discover even more based on the benefits that he had mentioned. So either he had pointed you to the beginning of the way, and you'll discover more along the way, or he is saying that there are other benefits. Either way, he is saying this is not all, but this is really important. So you understand why you're supposed to restrain your eyes. So that's the first part. It says the second thing that needs to happen in order to prevent that illness from entering the heart is for the heart itself to be strong. Right? To be resistant to that type of influence, not to seek it, not to need it. So what he means by that is what? قال فإن اشتغال القلب بما يبعده من ذلك ويحول بينه وبين الوقوع به. He says the heart has to be distracted, occupied, focused on the opposite of the haram, opposite of that obsessive love or attraction to the haram that will distance it from that and prevent the heart from falling victim to it. And what is it? He says it has to have fear and love. Fear of something, and that fear is connected to love, by the way. Let's begin with love. It will make more sense if we begin with love. It must have fear and love. He says it must love something more than that haram to be able to resist it. So there always will be competing loves in your heart. Haram will come and tell you, here I am. And it is in part attractive. If it was not attractive, it's not a test. If it was not attractive, it's not a struggle at all. You could say, go away, and it will just go away. It's not completely repulsive. So, okay, it's going to come to you. He says, if you do not love something more than that haram, you cannot resist it. But he's going to say that we do whatever we do based on love. So if you're not going to love something more than haram, how could you resist it? And also you should have fear. Fear based on that love, in the sense that I'm afraid that if I get that haram into my life, I will lose something greater and more beloved to me. So I'm not gonna adopt it. Or I'm afraid that when I get this haram into my life, it will bring more harm than benefit. So I love this person, and I want to be with them. It doesn't matter halal or haram, I don't care. So if I bring them into my life in a haram way, there is some benefit in it, right? But if you really think about it, that brings more harm than benefit. So when you think about that and you make that evaluation, you'll say, I don't want that haram. It's going to harm me more than benefit me. Bring me more sorrow and misery than joy and happiness. Anything. A little bit of alcohol, right? Yeah, what's the harm? But if you understand that if you take a little bit of alcohol, it could lead to a lot of alcohol, and then it could bring you a lot of disastrous results and outcomes in the akhirah for sure, but in the dunya, would you consume it? He says no. Like if you understand that there is no safe amount of alcohol, any little bit of alcohol can increase your risk of cancer. Would you say to yourself, I want to be drunk and then get cancer? So what's the benefit? I enjoy it for 1 day, 2 days, a year or 2 years, and then develop that illness and then be miserable and end my life? No. So that's the calculation. It says either if it comes into my life, it will chase away Allah's love, and Allah's love is greater in my eyes, that's why I'm not going to adopt it. Or either if it comes, it will bring some benefit, but much greater harm, and for that I'm not going to adopt it. So there has to be this fear and also that love. And that is the strength of the heart. Okay. وَشَرْحُ هَذَا, he says, what explain this, but he says, if you don't have that, you will definitely, necessarily be in love with something haram. You have to. There's no escape. قال وشرح هذا أن النفس لا تترك محبوبا إلا لمحبوب أعلى منه أو خشية مكروه حصوله أضر عليها من فوات هذا المحبوب. He says, what explains this is that a soul does not leave something that it loves except for something or someone that it loves more than that thing. Does not leave something that it is attracted to except for a something or someone that is of a greater love than the thing that it had left. Or khashyata makruh, or it fears a harm greater than the benefit that that beloved will bring to it. So you're not going to leave any love except for a greater love. قال وهذا يحتاج صاحبه إلى أمرين إن فقدهما أو أحدهما لم ينتفع بنفسه. He says you're going to need, in order to do this, whenever you are tested like that, two things that come to you, and you love both of them, but you have to put one ahead of the other. How will you be able to do this? He says you need two things. Valid sound insight that allows you to distinguish and differentiate between degrees of beloveds, degrees of benefits, degrees of harms, and the second one is an intent and a resolve and patience to be able to follow what you've realized. So the first is basiratun sahiha, a sound insight, meaning you have the ability to distinguish between what is right and what is wrong, what is beneficial and what is harmful. But that is insufficient. Even between different benefits, you'd have to distinguish between what has the greatest benefit and what has a lower benefit. What has one harm and what has a greater harm. And to be able to choose, or at least distinguish between the two, so that if you have to do one of two things, you will do that one with the greater benefit. And if you have to avoid or do one of two things, you will do one that has the least harm, not the greater harm. So بصيرة صحيحة فيؤثر أعلى المحبوبين على أدناهما. So you will favor the better of the two loved things that you have in versus the lower love, the higher love versus the lower love. قال وهذا خاصة العقل, and this is a feature of the mind or of wisdom, and you will not be considered wise if you do not have this. The second, he says, as we explained, he says a resolve and a patience that allows you to commit to that realization. And he says it's often that a person would know the distinction between right and wrong, the distinction between what has a greater benefit and a lower benefit, but because of his weakness and because of a weak resolve, he cannot do that, and he cannot favor what is more beneficial. And his knowledge then does not benefit him, meaning you know right from wrong. And he says that's the condition of a lot of people. You know right from wrong. But because you don't have that patience, you don't choose what is right. You allow yourself to take the haram, to consume it, to follow it, for a lot of reasons. قال ومثل هذا لا ينتفع بنفسه ولا ينتفع به غيره. And he says such a person who has weak patience and weak resolve is unable to benefit himself nor benefit others. Even though he may know, but he cannot benefit himself and nor benefit others. And Allah Azza wa Jalla, He said that He had combined these two conditions in the Quran. When He said subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْهُمْ أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا لَمَّا صَبَرُوا وَكَانُوا بِآيَاتِنَا يُوقِنُونَ. He said we made from them أئمة, leaders, religious leaders, role models, examples, who are guiding people when they committed two things. لَمَّا صَبَرُوا, when they were patient and they were certain about our ayat. So the two virtues that they had were yaqeen, and that certainty, ability to know right from wrong, and then patience, to be able to follow up on what you know, to commit to it after you have learned it. It says when they were able to know the truth and then commit to it and follow it, they became a'imma, leaders, religious leaders, role models, examples. He says that's the condition. Otherwise, a person will never be a leader religiously. And leader religiously does not need to be a famous person. I mean, you could be a leader in your family. You would be an example in your family, in your small family. You could be an example to one other person. But how can you be an example? He says you have to have both of those two things. You have to have insight. You know right from wrong. You have that knowledge. But then what? You are also committed to it. You follow up. قال وهذا هو الذي ينتفع بعلمه وينتفع به الناس. He says this is the person who his knowledge will benefit him and he will benefit other people as well. Because he says people are of types. The first is the one who walks in light and he has enough light to share with other people. He has his own light, he's guided, but he has extra light that can guide other people too. And he says the opposite is also true. Somebody who's walking in darkness and whoever follows him is also following in darkness. That's the opposite. And he says the third is a person who's just walking in his own light. He doesn't have extra light to guide others, but at least he's guided. Okay? But the important thing here is what? To analyze why people fail. Because we have lost one or two of those things. Sometimes we have people who are what? Really committed, but ignorant. Like if they actually were to know, were to be educated, were to listen to people's advice, they will know right from wrong and they'll be able to avoid the haram and do what pleases Allah Azza wa Jal because they have that resolve. It's built in them. They're strong. Right? So you find a lot of people who commit bid'ah, right? They're strong in their bid'ah, but it's misguided. If they were to be redirected to the truth, if only they would listen, then maybe they could be great. But unfortunately, they're not doing that. And you have the opposite, which is what? That people who know, okay, and there are various degrees of knowledge, but to a degree, people who know. If you were to ask a person deep down in your heart, do you believe that zina is right? Deep down, beyond your desire, beyond your love that you profess to this person or not, or to that sin, you're just simply addicted to it. Overall, if you were to think about it, is this a path that is viable for humanity? For people that you love? For your sister, for your brother, blood sister, blood brother, people that you care about, what would they say? Absolutely not. It's miserable. Alcohol, drugs, beyond your addiction to it, beyond your involvement in it. Do you think that this is something suitable for people? They say no, of course not. So there are things that people know, everybody knows. So what stops you from following what you know? It is this lack of sabr, lack of patience, lack of resolve, lack of determination. And there are other types of things that require more knowledge, right? But if a person learns and is willing to learn, he will know the difference between right and wrong and the difference between the greater good and the lesser good, the greater harm and the lesser harm. But it needs insight. And by the way, he talked about firasa before. The more obedient to Allah Azza wa Jal is, the more that Allah will grant you an insight to know the difference between the two. Right? The more that Allah will give you that insight. And the more sinful a person is, the more that he will be blinded by his sin, so he will not know the difference between right and wrong. We'll just finish this section inshallah. إِذَا عَرَفْتَ, he says, if you understand this, you will understand that it's impossible that the heart will have two types of loves. The love of Allah Azza wa Jal, who is He calls Al-Mahbub Al-A'la, the greatest beloved. The greatest love. He says Allah Azza wa Jal is the greatest love. So His love cannot coexist in the heart with loving as-suwar, the haram love of faces, physiques, bodies, being enslaved by that love, committing haram because of that love. He says, so loving Allah and loving this haram is impossible for it to coexist in the heart. They are opposites, they never meet. One of them will expel the other. Meaning if you love Allah Azza wa Jal, you're not going to be enslaved by haram, by love for the haram. But if you love the haram and it enslaves your heart, it will chase away from your heart loving Allah Azza wa Jal. Because you cannot have two masters. They're opposites. They're asking for two opposite things. And your heart is not big enough to have two masters. It's just to have only one. You could love different people, but that love is not all-consuming. If it grows up to a highest type of love, one of them only reigns. You can only have one king, right? In a kingdom, in a land, only one king. You can have ministers. You can have subjects. You get people with various amounts of power, but not two kings, only one king. So Al-Mahbub Al-A'la, who reigns supreme in the heart, who has that greatest obedience and that greatest love, he says it should be Allah Azza wa Jal. قال فمن كانت قوة حبه كلها للمحبوب الأعلى صرفه ذلك عن محبة ما سواه وإن أحبه لم يحبه إلا لأجله أو لكونه وسيلة إلى محبته أو قاطعا عما يضاد محبته وينقصها. He says, the one who truly loves Allah Azza wa Jal, and his love in his heart is the greatest love. And any other love, by the way, other than the love of Allah Azza wa Jal, is eventually diminishing and eventually tormenting. Any other love other than the love of Allah, and he is general. It's not talking just about haram. Any other love other than the love of Allah Azza wa Jal, his love is diminishing and tormenting. That's interesting. Because any other love other than the love of Allah Azza wa Jal is going to end. Right? And if not for Allah Azza wa Jal, it does not come back. Like, when will you see your loved ones again? When Allah brings them back. When will you enjoy them again? Enjoy their company. Where? In Jannah. But otherwise, any other love diminishes until it's nothing. They exit this life, or you exit. And it is also, on its own, tormenting. Right? You agree? You love your children? Doesn't that love torment you? Out of fear of losing them when they get sick, what will happen to them in the future? Are they happy? Are they sad? Are they this? So anything that you love, because there's always the possibility, that reality of losing them, it torments you. But not Allah's love. It doesn't torment. Because there's no possibility of loss. Nothing bad is going to happen in that relationship. He's not going to leave you. Anyone else will leave you. Whether by choice or not. Everyone else will leave you, but not Allah Azza wa Jal. And that love does not diminish. It enhanced. It can grow as long as you want it to grow. So he says, as long as that love is supreme in your heart, it will expel the love of anything else other than the love of Allah Azza wa Jal. And if you love it, you will love it for Him. And because it will bring you to Him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or it will block anything that will detract from His love. Now he is describing here the ultimate. You don't have to love your parents simply for Allah's sake. It's natural, right? You don't have to love your children for Allah's sake. It's a natural love. But he's saying that a person can reach a stage where they love what they love for Allah. Even their children, even their parents, even their spouses. Because they see everything through how Allah sees it. So they look at their children, and they say through them, I'm a better person, I'm a better worshipper of Allah Azza wa Jal. Through my spouse, I'm a better worshipper of Allah Azza wa Jal. Through this food, I'm a better worshipper of Allah Azza wa Jal. So you love it not only because you love it, naturally, you love it because of Allah. So the spouse, the child, the house, the job, you love it because of Allah Azza wa Jal. So all of your love now is reoriented because of that great love. Before it wasn't. The love of Allah was a love among other loves that you have. But when it ascends to the height of your heart and it becomes the king, then it directs every other love, just like a magnet. It organizes everything. That's what he's talking about. So you love everything for Allah's sake. And you distaste or hate everything for Allah's sake. And he says, وَالْمَحَبَّةُ الصَّادِقَةُ تَقْتَضِي تَوْحِيدَ الْمَحْبُوبِ. He says, true love requires the oneness of the beloved. It's like when you say, La ilaha illallah, it also means that the extreme, the top love in your heart should also be Allah Azza wa Jal. He says, if it's true love, there has to be tawheed. Tawheed of the one that you love. That you love Allah the most. And that you do not associate others with Allah Azza wa Jal in that love. And he says, think about just humans. If you love them, some of them would be so jealous to say, if you love anyone similar to, in an equal amount like me, that's considered betrayal. Right? Like if you love anyone else like me, that's betrayal. I should be unique in your heart. That's true love. That's they'll say. That is true love. And he says, by the way, no human deserves to be loved so exclusively. But if this is true, or if this is the claim of some humans, what do you think about Allah Azza wa Jal? Right? That He wants this heart of yours to be His. And there is enough space in it for you to love other things in life. It's not like Allah Azza wa Jal alone and there's nothing else at all. No. But it was saying is that He should be supreme. So if exclusivity is a claim by some humans, it is definitely most worthy of Allah Azza wa Jal. قال ولهذا لا يغفر الله سبحانه أن يشرك به في هذه المحبة ويغفر ما دون ذلك. He says if a person associates partners with Allah in that type of love, He does not forgive it. That is the love with submission. Not just love, of course. It's love to the extreme. Love with submission. He forgive any other sin, but not the love, or not the shirk in love. He says then, so let a person choose either of these loves, because they are never combined in their heart. Whoever turns away from the love of Allah Azza wa Jal and His remembrance and longing to see Him, Allah Azza wa Jal will afflict him with loving something else. And that is interesting, because your heart has been created to love. Right? Your heart is empty without love. You have to love something. So if you turn away from Allah Azza wa Jal, away from His love, away from His remembrance, away from listening to Him and being comforted by His words, comforted by the Quran, comforted by dua, that type of proximity, intimacy in your ibadah. He says if you turn away from it, you will be afflicted naturally with other types of love, because your heart then will be empty. So you'll be looking for love. Have you not heard of people who are empty? They say, I want someone to love. So why are you looking for someone or something to love? Because it's empty without that. I need that to feel whole, to feel complete. So he says, if you're not going to have Allah Azza wa Jal, you're going to be afflicted with something else that you will love. And it will torment you in the dunya, and in the grave, and in the akhirah. He says, فَإِمَّا أَن يُعَذِّبَهُ. He says, either He will torment him, or he'll be tormented by loving idols, or loving the cross. So that's love that is ibadah. So there will be people who, instead of loving Allah Azza wa Jal, they love an idol. They'll die for it. Or they'll love the cross and they'll die for it. Or he says, أَوِ الْمُرْدَانِ, beardless young boys. That's a haram type of love or attraction. Or loving the fire. This is for the worshippers of fire. Or loving women, or loving money, or loving friends. Simply just to be out and be around friends. Whatever they want from you to do, you'll do. Just because you can't say no to them. You find yourself in them, in their recognition, in their love. So you will never say no to them. You'll commit any haram with them. You'll follow them. Wherever you go, even to hell, you'll follow them. Right? So you discover that that's a flaw. Because why? You're empty here. So you need something to fill it. What will fill it? It has to be something. So you'll feed it. And you'll look. And whatever is available, whatever is appealing, will be the thing that fills your heart. Or غير ذلك مما هو في غاية الحقارة والهوان. He said whatever else that is low in stature. فالإنسان عبد محبوبه كائنا من كان. He says a human being is the slave of whatever he loves. Whatever you love, you become its slaves. As the poet had said, فأنت القتيل بكل من أحببته فاختر لنفسك في الهوى من تصطفي. He says, you are going to be killed by whatever you love. So choose, who do you want to love? Whatever you love is going to have that power over you. It can hurt you. Right? It can elevate you or it can doom you. And because it's so close to you, because it is in your heart, then he says, choose, what do you want to love? Who do you want to give your heart to? And you know stories of people, men and women, they've loved someone and it was their doom. Right? It destroyed their life. So he says, choose the object of your love. فَمَنْ لَمْ يَكُنْ إِلَهُهُ مَالِكُهُ وَهَوَاهُ كَانَ إِلَهُهُ هَوَاهُ فَمَنْ يَكُنْ إِلَهُهُ مَالِكُهُ وَمَوْلَاهُ كَانَ إِلَهُهُ هَوَاهُ. He says, if your ilah, if Allah Azza wa Jal is not the governor, the owner of your heart, then your hawa is your ilah. So you must have a God. You must have an ilah. And he's going to talk about the ilah, inshallah, in future lectures. He's going to be talking about the ilah, or what is ubudiyyah. We mentioned ubudiyyah is what? To be a abd to Allah Azza wa Jal is to love Him the most and submit to Him the most. So if Allah Azza wa Jal is not the one that you're submitting to out of love, then you obviously have to submit to somebody else out of love. And if Allah is not the governor of your life, then who will govern your life? It'll be your desire. And if your governor is your desire will tell you, do halal, you'll do it. Do haram, you'll do it. Commit shirk, you'll do it. It becomes your ilah. That's the thing that He actually is directing your life. It's not that you're prostrating to your desire, it's just simply you're listening to it. And if you listen to it, it will take you away from Allah Azza wa Jal. So this is, inshallah, the conclusion of that particular section. In the following one, he'll start talking about ranks of love and go further into what love is, bi'idhnillah azza wa jal. Just inshallah, a reminder that we'll have to pause for the month of Ramadan, and we'll be back inshallah after that, the month bi'idhnillah azza wa jal. So just remember where we've stopped. Okay, inshallah. This is the last inshallah. There is no lecture inshallah next week, and bi'idhnillah azza wa jal, we'll be back bi'idhnillah azza wa jal after the month bi'idhnillah azza wa jal. So let me know inshallah if you have questions. Fadal.
The question about the eyes and the heart and the passage or the highway in between.
No.
What you said is very conflicting. What the Sheikh is saying is if the heart is corrupted, the eye is corrupted. And then the inverse is true as well. He's saying if the eyes are corrupted, the heart is corrupted. So which one has preference? Or which one impacts the other the most?
Okay, so you're saying which one of the two impacts the other the most? Does the heart impact the eyes the most, or the eyes impact the heart the most? If you're thinking about which of the two has the greater impact, it definitely goes to the heart. It definitely goes to the heart. But the idea here is that even if the heart is the purest of hearts, but for whatever reason the person fails to restrain his eyes, his heart will not remain pure. It will be corrupted by what he sees. So a person who is just simply well-intentioned, goes on social media, no evil intent at all, and you just keep scrolling and looking at things, and doesn't look away, you can't after the passage of an hour or two come back with the same heart, right? Heart has shifted, has been polluted. So which of the two is stronger? The heart definitely is, because it's the king. If it's that part of the body that dictates what everything else does. Its reform is the reform of the rest, and its corruption is the corruption of the rest. But it also relies on the input that it receives from everyone else. So it depends on what it hears, depends on what the tongue says, it depends on what the eyes have seen. So if it also does not keep those tools or those portals in check, it comes back polluting the heart. So both ways, inshallah. Less sinful. Now, so the brother is saying, he says, I mean, the shahwa, the desire of someone who's older is unlike one who is younger. So is it less sinful, let's say, for instance, if a person has less desire as an old man to look versus a young man? Of course, the greater the desire and the greater the impact that it has, the greater the sin, right? So if a person has, so for instance, just what comes to mind as you were talking about it, if an old man commits zina, his sin is greater than a younger man, simply because the urge is less, and yet he did commit that sin. So you could think about it this way, that if it's an older man with less desire, yet he looks, right, despite that, at the haram, that his sin could double, not be less, just simply because he has less of an urge, but yet he's committing that haram. The issue here is that how do we determine who is an old man, and how do you determine when it is not a fitna anymore? Some may think I'm beyond it, right? I'm fine. And then he'll be in his 70s. I've heard a scholar who was in his 80s, and he says, I'm still afraid of the fitna of women, right? Just because you don't know when and if you slip. And if there's a desire there somewhere, and it is dormant, right? Just like a fire, it is just right there. And when it's presented itself to you, you'll take advantage of it. So you say, if you want to be safe, now as far as sin or not sin, this is with Allah Azza wa Jalla, Allahu Alam. But as if you want to be safe, it says, until you die. You would apply this so that you would save yourself from it. Allahu Alam. That's the best I can offer. You can add. No. No. That's true, yeah. The brother is saying it usually starts with the eye, as the eye commits zina. As the Prophet ﷺ said, that the unlawful look is a look of zina. And it graduates from there into a growing desire until the body commits that sin, as the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith. So yeah, it begins with there and it keeps growing until it reaches the heart. And then from the heart to the rest of the body, inshallah. So you have to think about it, right? You have to think about how to develop those two things that Ibn al-Qayyim was talking about. Enough knowledge to be able to know right from wrong. And then also based on that resolve and that patience, that determination to apply what you have learned. So it's not just enough to know. And that application comes from increasing your iman. Like, how do I apply what I've learned? Okay, I know this is haram. I know social media is highly problematic. I know all of these things. Okay, how do I apply this? You have to engage yourself in ibadah. Bring yourself closer to Allah Azza wa Jal. It's general. Sometimes when I say this, I feel like I'm repeating myself. But you understand how to, the elements of it. Better salah, or at least observe salah if you're not. And then better salah. Quran, or more dhikr of Allah Azza wa Jal, more dua. Spending more time in the masjid or around Muslims. When you're saturated with Islam, with Iman, you have more of a power to apply what you know. But if not, you'll know, but you'll disregard all of it. Because why would you? The other thing is far easier and more attractive immediately. It just gives you something versus just struggling to stay away from haram. And you're just by yourself. By yourself in the sense among the minority. And you're looked down on, you're criticized, right? So you need that support. So try on working on enhancing those two. Your ilm, but also an application of what you know. Let me check if there's anything. I don't understand how Allah's love doesn't leave. Perhaps one will commit a sin and He will be angry with him. So, okay. I don't know if I understand fully this comment, but let me try to answer what I understand. So as long as you are a Muslim, we'll always say that there is a minimum of Allah's love that exists in your heart. That's why you're a Muslim. Without it, you're not. You must love Allah Azza wa Jal at some degree. If we say that the love of Allah Azza wa Jal will leave, either we're saying that a lot of it will leave, or that eventually all of it will leave. If all of Allah's love leave, then that person is what? He's not a Muslim anymore. Right? So a person could commit shirk, could disbelieve because of love. I love this person so much, I don't care if they're Muslim or not, I'll marry them. I will be with them. Right? I don't care about Islam, I don't care about the Quran, I don't care about Muhammad ﷺ. I don't care. I love them that much. So a person could choose that instead of Allah Azza wa Jal. That's how the love of Allah could leave. I love them a lot versus this. Or the love could leave in portions, meaning we always commit a sin because the love of Allah Azza wa Jal subsides in our heart and that sin grows. That's why we commit it at that moment. So at that moment, the love of Allah Azza wa Jal is weak. Otherwise, if not, we will not be able to commit that sin. If you really love Allah Azza wa Jal. Right? Like you cannot harm your parents if you truly love them. But if your parents are, you'll not talk ill about your parents, let's say. Let's bring that as an example. You'll not backbite your parents, you'll not talk ill of them. And that is the strongest, or that feeling is the strongest when they're around you and you love them. But if your parents are far away from you and you have lost that emotional connection, you may say bad things about them. Because the attachment is not strong and the love is not strong. So that's an example of Allah's love as well. If the love is really strong, you can't imagine upsetting Allah. This is why, how could I do this? He said no. How can I say yes to it? You say, I cannot upset Allah Azza because I love Him that much. But if the love is weak, then yeah, you'll be able to. Okay. Yeah. Not if it is a coincidental, accidental look and you immediately scroll away. The issue here with it is that that medium doesn't allow you to see a lot of good things. That's why you have to restrict. Oh, I'm sorry? Yeah, and either remove the app or follow a particular number of people. Don't go randomly looking at whatever the app is offering you. Follow exactly a limited number of people who are pleasing to Allah Azza wa Jal. And once you're done, you leave. So if you do that, you're safe bi'idhnillah Azza wa Jal. But any accidental look, just like in the streets, you look at something and it's haram. There's an ad, there's a billboard, there's a person, you look at them, they're attractive, it's haram. But you immediately look the other way, you're fine. It doesn't damage. But even with that, right, you sometimes notice that the image lingers, right? The image lingers. And so you'd have to fight that image. Fight the fact that it's still there. Say, astaghfirullah, a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Avoid that place because it's in your head, you'll think, maybe I'll go there again. Maybe I'll see that same person again. Or a similar scene again. Or something that will please me, just like that image pleased me again. So you have to resist that temptation, the place, the person, or anything that reminds you of them. So that will teach you a lesson again as far as avoiding either this person or that location or this time of day. Will teach you what to avoid and what to adhere to, inshallah. I am working with women in addiction and I pray to find a better job to leave the profession. Please, all of you, pray for your sister. Thanks. May Allah Azza wa Jal give you a better job. Ameen. And anybody else who is struggling with that, may Allah Azza wa Jal replace whatever difficulty they're in with ease, and may Allah Azza wa Jal give them a better job, better profession, better halal that gives them comfort in their minds and comfort in their hearts. Ameen. Okay. You have any other questions, inshallah, here? No? Okay, inshallah. Bismillah. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik ashhadu an la ilaha ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.